Yeah, you're with Chris from Heavy Mag, and we're here today to talk about a little bit of a legendary concert happening on December the 10th in Melbourne. So it's all based around Melbourne metal warriors Frankenbok, who this year celebrate 25 years of existence. But instead of throwing a traditional style celebration, the band have elected to pay homage to the entire Frankenbok legacy by inviting members from each of the 5 major Frankenbok lineups to reunite and perform songs from their era of the band's history. So it's an arduous and time-consuming task, but one which can already be considered a major success despite the official celebration still being just over 2 weeks away. So tonight we've got the pleasure of speaking with founding member and original vocalist Adam Glynn, better known as Hutchy, to go back through the early days of Frankenbok and the platform that laid the foundations for a quarter of a century's worth of music. So Hutchy, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, brother. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, man. Just on having a bit of lunch, scoffing some lunch down in between work, just living in the real world. But yeah, all good. Life is good. Multitasking, trying.
Sweet. So take us back to the very start of Frankenbok in the summer of 1997, mate, when guitarist and fellow founding member Aaron Butler came back from Florida with a bunch of Tascam 4 track recordings using a drum machine. Do you remember the initial conversation that led to the birth of Frankenbok?
Well, basically, I remember hearing from his girlfriend first, Sonia, at the time, or his fiance, and she rang me up, and we sort of caught up, and then she's saying that Aaron was coming back, and I was really excited because when I first met Aaron all those years ago, he was playing in bands with Tim, and I really just loved what he did. I knew him throughout high school. He was just one of those guys that kind of stood out, and always wanted to approach him back in the day when I was younger and less confident, and sort of hit him up to do something. But he sort of came back, and he had these tapes with these recordings he'd done. It was quite different to what he'd previously done. And at the time, my band, Bacterium, was kind of on the way out. So I sort of said to him, I'd love to do something, and would you be open to me putting vocals to this stuff? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, well, what do we do for a drummer? And I said, well, you've got a drum machine. Let's just start and go from there and build. And yeah, that's pretty much how it sort of started. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So what was your early vision for Frankenbok at that stage?
Well, my last band was a bit more kind of fungal influence, so lots of, metal crossed with funk jazz sort of combination. So I really wanted to do like a really sort of brutal kind of death metal band. I was really into Damaged and Napalm Death and Bloodduster, so I didn't really want to sing clean at all. I just wanted to be growling and screaming all the way through it. So if you sort of listen to the earlier stuff, that's what the vocals kind of were. The drum machine, though, kind of gave it a quirky edge to it, like a really tacky, tinny Casio kind of sound, and that kind of inspired some of the vocals as well, like in the sense of like sort of weird scatty stuff I was sort of doing back in the early days, yeah.
I know this question's been asked before, mate, and I hate to be that guy who asks the stupid fucking questions, but for the sake of history, I'm going to have to ask you again, like, where did the name Frankenbok come from?
So basically, when Aaron was in Florida, I think he was hanging out with a bunch of dudes, and he was sort of telling them about all the Aussie slang, and then one of the words was fair income, and then I think a conversation came up about Vegemite or something, and his mate was like, "Oh, Vegemite, you guys eat that? Frankenbok on that." And Aaron's like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, what's that? What's that saying?" And yeah, so it's just a bungle or stuff up of fair income. So the name he called the demos that, and I thought the name was great. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's the music that built the name, and I thought there was something kind of cool about it. There's also, I think, Frankenbok's also like an old type of war aircraft, I think, from memory. Yeah.
Very cool. And it's fair to say that Frankenbok's early music was different to anything ever heard in this country before. So was it a focus back then to create something totally outside the box, or was it more of a natural thing?
Well, once the initial lineup was kind of built, I think what you got to kind of respect with any band is, in the end, there was 5 of us, and we were all brothers, like all good mates, very close, and we all loved heavy music, but we also had our different quirks and different tastes as well. And I think what it was is that we kind of created a band that had a space where everyone could kind of put in their input, and there was compromises to some extent. I mean, not everything they did I liked, but they always let me sort of gave me the freedom to express myself vocally and do whatever I wanted. So it was great in that sense. So if, say, I had more control over it, it might have been a very different band. It might not have done what it ended up doing back in those days. And just as, say, Tim or Aaron had more control over it. But, at the end of the day, you like the people you're with, you respect them. And everyone has the right to kind of put in and contribute, and I don't really write music. Well, I didn't back then. So, yeah, it was just more like, well, let's just do it. And, you just give the music what you think it needs. So back in the early sort of days, I was just kind of growling and screaming over stuff. And then the music kind of started to change a little bit. So I just started incorporating some of the older styles of vocals I used to do in my previous band. So, yeah, it's just one of those things really. It just kind of organically happened, I think. There was 3 years prior to getting our drummer where we were kind of pushing shit uphill and playing to like nobody, and I think people didn't take us quite as serious because we had a drum machine. We didn't have a full drummer. And then I think there was this one gig, it was like a turning point where I think we sort of got onto this really great deal with the Wolves, who were like probably the kings of the Melbourne metal scene back in those days, early sort of 99, 2000. And we got to play to a really great, a crowd, a pub full of people, because they were pulling people already. So they just gave us some great exposure. And when you get in those moments where there are people there, it's kind of a do or die thing. So you just go out and try to put on the best show you can and make an impression. And from there, it just kind of started to snowball a little bit. So it's partly, doing what you do, but also, finding the right people and just being in the right place at the right time as well. So yeah, it was just one of those things that just naturally kind of organically, it was a slow burn, but when we got there, it was great. And then, you do the next thing of actually doing a proper recording, because back then we were still figuring everything out. We were doing a lot of tascam home recordings. This was kind of before big computer setups, and none of us knew how to do any of that stuff anyway. But we just sort of did a lot of rough demos, and, it's a lot easier now. But back then we would just make our own tapes and our own artwork and just hand it out to people. I know with my old band, Bacterium, I tried to show it to people that used to like that band, but Frankenbok was a completely different beast, so it attracted a different following, if anything. So, but yeah, we got there in the end.
And we touched on this a little bit before, mate, but you're obviously a big fan of Mike Patton's vocals, and a lot of that shone through in the earlier material, but it never went beyond the point of inspiration and went towards imitation. Like, was it difficult for you to find that balance vocally between having your own voice and the inspiration?
Sorry, who? Mike who?
Michael James, someone.
Look, I like all types of music. I mean, Mike Patton I love Faith No More, and I love all the projects Mike Patton does, but my favourite band of all time is actually In Excess. And I think just with anything with music, because we all do listen to a wide variety of stuff, I just basically was doing the one band in the end, and so you just kind of try to incorporate all your taste into it. I tried to make a band that I would like to hear, I guess. Obviously balancing that out with the creative compromise of working with 4 other people. And, as I said, Frankenbok wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but I think that's what kind of worked for it. And, I'm sure there was times when those guys were listening to the vocals I was coming up with, but there was that respect for me to sort of let me do my thing just as I did for those guys. And, but yeah, like, I do love Mike Patton. I didn't want to be Mike Patton. I think a lot of that comes across, but that's just my natural voice as well. The way I can't actually sing. I just have that whiny, nasally kind of vocal, very strange. But it also came from influence like Alanis Morissette as well. So I love that really, not contrived, but that really out-pushed kind of vocal where it's really straining. Like, I'm not a pitch perfect hit the notes correct. I'd rather a bit of passion and conviction behind the singing, rather than, because to me today, like a lot of the clean vocals, and I'm not trying to rag on anybody, but a lot of it is very sterile to me, and it just sounds too computerized and auto-tuned and whatnot. I like a little bit of left of center, and just nothing's ever perfect. So I think it's more about capturing a vibe in a recording or live than it is to be completely perfect at something. And I think in my experience, when you sort of, or from what I've seen and observed from really great musicians, when they are too focused on the craft or know too much about it, it's sort of, there's something about ignorance, I think, and not knowing what you're doing that kind of gives you an edge, I think. So that's just where I always tried to come from. I was just lucky I found some great musicians that were hardworking and were willing to give me a shot, and I guess, believed in what I was doing, or at least were settling for me at the time. So, yeah, cool. just how it kind of panned it out, yeah.
Right. So after you and as a founder of Frankenbok, like over the next couple of years, you welcomed in bass player Tim Meideke and guitarist Scott Lang. So did having those 2 extra members impact the sonic direction that you actually initially started up for?
I guess it did a little bit, because obviously more people, more cooks stirring the pot and whatnot. But you know, Tim I always really admired as well. Him and Aaron have had a massive musical history together, and Scott with Tim was doing Zombinol. So it was just one of those things. I think in the end we just kind of picked the best members of the people we knew that were really into it and just wanted to sort of do it. Aaron and Scott were very different in levels of where they were at guitar-wise, but, you know, Scott's a great guitarist, don't get me wrong. Sorry, that sounds like I'm putting him down, which I'm not, but it was just his attitude, and Scott had a really, you know, was very disciplined, had a really, you know, good business sort of sense to him as well, and quite organised. And as with Tim, like the three of those guys just were very, very hard-working guys, and turned up, like back in those days, we were rehearsing, you know, anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, really trying to get as tight as we could. And then we ended up going off to do the album, and it's just sad that we sort of jumped in because it was kind of now or never. It was like 3.5 years and we hadn't really recorded anything properly. So it's like, we've got to get something out there if we want to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, halfway through that first album, we came across Mick. It would have been great to have actually done that album with a drummer, but, you know, the sounds we got for the time, it sounds like a real drummer's playing. So yeah, we credited him on the first album anyway. But yeah, I just think more the merrier. I mean, you can have 2 people, but you're only limited to those 2 people. I think the more influence you've got in there, I think that's what's great about a band like, say, Faith No More, which resonates with me, where you've got sort of 5 very different people putting something in, and everyone's idea gets fostered and manipulated and, you know, reinvented, and the original vision ends up being something very different. I think that's core for success of any band, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, despite the fact, as you mentioned, like, you still had no drummer back then, but Frankenbok decided to record your debut album, Greetings and Salutations, with super high guitarist D.W. Norton in 1999. So, did you enter the studio with a set plan, or did you sort of more make it up as you went and adapt to the circumstances?
Well, I think we'd been playing those songs for so long, we knew them in our sleep. And the great thing about having a drum machine is that, bang, it goes straight in. We started actually with Mark Rochelle, and he sort of programmed and triggered all the drums and stuff. And then DW came in to do the guitars, and he's kind of the guy that did the metal sort of stuff at Backbeach at the time. And I knew of Richie because I'd had experiences with Bacterium, never recorded with him prior to that, but I knew he was at the time one of the best metal producers in the country. And it's kind of like it's like, we should probably do this with DW and get it out there, because, you know, he knows a lot of people, he's produced a lot of work, and a lot of what happened in those early days when it did start to blow up for us, we do owe to people like D.W. Norton, because he put us on Fault Line Records and got the album out there, showed it to a lot of people, and it started getting into the hands of, you know, Andrew Hogue, and then on Triple J and that. So, and then he got us going out and touring with bands over in like Adelaide. So that's how we met the Truth Corroded guys, and then just sort of built from there. So to answer your question, I guess there was no real plan. I think it was like just going in and executing something that had been fairly well rehearsed, but same time, I like to leave a bit of impulse in there when I'm doing the vocals. You kind of know what you're doing, but sometimes it's good to experiment and then just try something a little different or left of center, and and see what happens. But, you know, there's been a few of those demos. So I think there was a first Frankenbok demo, and then there's one called The Album's on the Way. And there are sort of 2 versions of Greetings and Salutations, but then there's a couple of extra songs that didn't make it on there. So, yeah, it just panned out the way it was. When I listen to Greetings and Salutations now, to me it sounds like 2 EPs. So the first 5 tracks is like where we were starting to go, which would have leaked over into Loopholes and Great Excuses. And then the last 5 tracks are kind of reminiscent of the first couple of demos we were doing as well. So, but back in that time when new metal was really sort of blowing up, we were still quite old school and not really doing what other bands were trying to sort of do. Like, we were sort of trapped in the past a little bit, but sort of a little confused and still mixing things up and just doing what we wanted to do. Like, that's what was great about those guys. They weren't trying to sort of force any kind of trendy agenda on any of the other band members. Like, especially Aaron, it's just like, no, we're just doing what we're doing. Those guys were into what they were doing. They were respectful enough to let me do what I did, and it just kind of worked in the end. Yeah.
Even back then, like, the band members' natural sense of humour and positive outlook on life was a major feature of Frankenbok's music. So how important was that attitude and approach in setting up the band in those early years, do you think?
I think it's very important. It's just, it's about getting along and making each other laugh. Like, some of the vocal bits that made it into songs was because, you know, just jamming it out in the jam room. And then I remember, just as a random example, like the chorus from Linguistics, I originally had some kind of like a German kind of voice thing I was trying to do, like Rammstein or whatever they're called, and it wasn't really working. And I think someone like Scott just turned to me and said, "Look, just fucking yell the most angriest thing you can think of," and then bang, I just did. And they just all pissed themselves laughing. They go, "Yep, that's it. That's the chorus. That's what it should be." And then, we obviously take the music seriously, but I think when you get up live and play, it's all, we just like to have fun and entertain people. Like, seeing bands like Strapping Young Lad, Devin Townsend's very charismatic and very humorous on stage. These are brilliant musicians. Same with Mike Patton and stuff. And I love that. Like, I like the fact that the music's one thing, but the people that perform it is something else. And I think that's core to being entertaining as well. Like, if you can make people bang their heads and then laugh and all shake their booties and dance around too, I think that's a cool thing to do. It's just such I don't know, it's so ironic. It's just, it's a contradiction of what it's supposed to be. And we didn't want to fall into that, that brooding, heads down, looking at our shoes metal band. Like, we wanted to have fun with it and be entertaining. And, cause that's who we are. Like, we all grew up liking the same things, the same music, same movies and stuff. And one of the core things of Frankenbok is, and even now when I go to these rehearsals, the guys will just quote movies to each other. Like, 80% of the conversations these idiots have is just throwing movie quotes at each other. It's hilarious, and it's been great to just kind of slide back into that kind of headspace and laugh at these guys. It's been really great these last couple of months, just getting back and rehearsing with them, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's like no time has passed. So yeah.
And from the outset, Frankenbok were a hard-working band on the local touring circuit. So was that a conscious decision by the band, or was it more a case of supply versus demand?
I think it's just, I don't know if it was supply, if it was demanded and we were supplying people. I think it's just the dumb thing. Like, like I used to be very interested in the history of the bands I loved, and one of the core things that is done when you are in a band, look at Parkway Drive, for example. You do have to tour. You have to keep going and going and playing as much as you can. Obviously you've got to have some balance and do things strategically. But back in those days when nobody knows who you are, you do have to, tour relentlessly. It's what's required for the craft. It also, you might go back to a place 3 or 4 times in a year, but there could be an extra couple of people there that weren't there last time, because hopefully people bring people back next time. But it's just what's got to be done. And sometimes you bump into people that like what you do because they just were out on a random night out and they thought, "Oh fuck, I've never even heard of you guys," and you guys dug what you did. So I think touring, it's a hard thing to do, because you got to balance work life and relationships, and if you've got kids and stuff, it's not easy. But unfortunately it's just one of those things that's got to be done. And so back in those days, we loved it. Like, we loved touring. Like, I loved getting in the bus and driving. It beats going to work, and just love playing gigs. It was a lot of fun back in those days. Yeah.
And you soon caught the attention of Australian metal label Roadrunner Australia, who signed Frankenbok to their offshoot Dark Carnival. So how did that change things for the band? We're a serious record company, I guess. So because of the success of Slipknot, John Sadley of Roadrunner decided to do this sub-label, and we were one of 4 bands lucky enough to get signed to it. And yeah, we just had like this whole team kind of working for us, and it really helped get the music out there. And then we sort of started getting the right people for bookings, and then we started getting great support sites like the System of a Down support and Slayer and Machine Head. And yeah, but it's just, I don't know, like it was great also too, because you could actually find the CD back in the day. Like, It's not like today where the albums just come out and bang, people can just look on their phone and listen to it. Back in the day, you had to kind of go to shops, and certain people didn't have it, and then they had to order it in. But it definitely helps if you've got that kind of crew behind you, like for the publishing, words are escaping me at the moment, but just getting the word out there, the media, all that sort of stuff. So it definitely helps. And it definitely gave us the leg up we needed. So, and to sort of go into a band after that didn't have quite that label support, you do really feel it. And I'm sure Frankenbok, the current lineup, kind of feel it now too, because they do it all themselves now. They basically, they print all their merch, they print their albums, they do everything. Like Dan McDougall, as I'm sure you know, he does everything. So yeah. A lot of work.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So in late 2000, Frankenbok again recorded with D.W. Norton and released the Loopholes and Greatest Excuses EP in early 2001. So what goals did you have going into that EP, mate? And did you achieve them?
Yeah, well, I think we just wanted to make something better. Not necessarily heavier, but more diverse. I know I definitely want to be more diverse with the vocals and expand, the audience and whatnot, and really incorporate more of my influences. And I think we because we did have a drummer that was great too, so we experimented and did a lot more percussion stuff as well. And also the fact that there was 5 of us there, and also that, Scott and Tim were a bit more involved in the songwriting as well, because a lot of the earlier stuff was mostly Aaron. Tim did do a few songs here and there, but yeah, it was it was just more of a full 5-man effort, I think. And just definitely having drums and being able to separate all that properly, I think it definitely helped.
So that year, a 16-year-old me got his first introduction to Frankenbok when I heard your cover of Madison Avenue's Dance It, Don't Call Me Baby. So what was the inspiration behind covering that particular song, mate?
From memory, I think it's because at Back Beach, Madison Avenue actually was recording their album there at the time.
Right.
And we actually got to hear it before it came out. And there was all these stories about the singer there and stuff. I won't repeat them, but yeah, they're just and I think Mark Rochelle was producing it, and he was the co-partner with DW. Like DW worked there, but it was Mark's studio. And he was just, like all producers, they like to, push their work and blow wind up their own asses. And he was sort of saying this new dance act's going to be the next big thing, and we heard Don't Call Me Baby before it kind of came out, and then when it did come out and blow up, it was just funny. I think the guys decided to do like a cover of it, but the plan was, I think originally we were going to do a whole bunch of different songs as covers. There was Michael Jackson's Beat It, we were doing Faith No More, Surprise You Dead. There was a whole bunch of songs we were going to do. Unfortunately, I have mixed feelings about the Don't Call Me Baby thing. Like, the best thing about it for me was when we first played at Metal for the Brain, we got up and did it, and you're playing to a sea of dudes in fucking battle jackets. They're all staunch in metal, and then we played this song, and people were laughing and dancing and got into it. To me, that was a joke, and it was executed well, and it was awesome. I didn't realise we were going to keep playing this song, and I certainly didn't realise that we were going to make a fucking film clip for it, and that'd be the main focus of what the band was. And that's where my nose got a little bit out of joint, I think, because there was much better songs on that EP that we should have done a film clip for. But that's the thing, unfortunately. There's a business side to music, and there's some guy sitting on a chair behind a desk who doesn't know fuck all about anything, and says, well, this is what we should be pushing. This will be the difference between you guys selling, 10,000 units as opposed to 2,000 units. And, on one hand, it was great because, look, it got us some exposure, it got us onto Triple J, and people liked it, but it kind of turned us in my opinion, into a little bit of a joke band, which didn't sit well with me. Like, yeah, we had a sense of humor about ourselves, but I took our music quite seriously to some extent. And yeah, I don't know. I look back on it now and it's like, yeah, all good. I really don't care. I'm not attached to it anymore, so it doesn't bother me. But it kind of felt like, for me, my legacy to Frankenbok was that fucking song, and it's not. Like, I wrote some great songs with those guys, some really fucking heavy songs. And yeah, so when I left and Adam B Metal came in, it's like, okay, the joke loser frontman's kind of left, and now they're a more serious metal band, which wasn't the case. Like, that's just the feedback that came back to me. But it's all good now. But I've healed up everything with Aaron and the guys, and it's awesome. But that's just the one thing that didn't sit right with me. So that's why I went on and did my other band and whatnot. But yeah, that's just the thing. Like, it's unfortunate. Like, in this country, you got to kind of play ball a little bit with music. There's certain things you have to do for music to get out there, and it really sucks. Like, back in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, there was lots of like Italian mafia type gangsters that before the whole MTV thing and shit, and that money would just take a chance on something. Like, it's if we don't understand it, but that's fine. We'll pour some money into it, and if it fails, then maybe the next thing we invest in will do better. And that's where I think music needs to get back to, where we're not pushing these agendas and trying to make the same recycled shit for people. And I don't know, like, that's why I think music can be in a bit of dire straits, because of that kind of attitude. Nothing seems to change. And like, one of my favorite albums of all times is Faith No More's Angel Dust, because it's so unique and interesting. And they really put themselves out there creatively. They went the complete bipolar opposite from the real thing. And it's an album that flopped, but in my opinion, and in most people's opinion, it's one of those albums that changed everything. Yeah. Like, it's one of the most influential albums of all time, and it started a whole bunch of stuff. But people have to, experiment and try different things. Like, I know there's a formula to write music that is successful, but if everyone keeps doing it, then where is the uniqueness? Where is the great new music that comes out? And that's kind of my opinion of the whole "Don't Call Me Baby" thing. It was a novelty song. We did it, for me, it was meant to just be a metal for the brain and something we throw in. But when the record company decided to make it like that's what Frankenbok is and that's what's going to break us through, that's where I started to get my arse hairs up a little bit and started to feel a little bit embarrassed. And then, I don't know, back in those days, my skin wasn't as thick, and I read all the online comments and stuff. And yeah, I don't know, like, it was everyone's kind of idea, and obviously I consented to it, but it never sat well with me that people seem to think that was my idea, and that's what I brought to the band. So, but anyway, like, I'm glad that's all out now, and people know the difference. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, sure. Well said, mate. So I don't want to go into details about you leaving the band, mate, because quite frankly, that's no one's business but yours and the guys. But at the time when you did leave, mate, like, would you say that you were happy with your contribution and your legacy to Frankenbok, I guess?
Yes and no. Like, I was happy with the first 2 albums we did. There was a couple of things that sort of went down that kind of, again, just put my nose out of joint. And I don't know, but it was starting to get out that I was kind of like the weakest link. Like, it felt like those guys were growing together and I seemed to be sticking out like a sore thumb. And there's just a bunch of other things, like, like, it's nothing against those guys. Like, I don't want to be disrespectful to them. Like, it's, they're great musicians. They're good guys. It's just, at the end of the day, being in a band is a relationship, and we were together for like 6-7 years. And after that time, you know each other quite well. And I'm far from perfect, just as they're not either. And you start to get on each other's nerves and stuff. I think there were some decisions being made where I couldn't always be there. And I just remember with the first album coming out with those live tracks, I just was not happy about it at all. It's like, it's too late. Like, they didn't get run by me at all. And it's just like, well, aren't we a democracy here, sort of thing? And yeah, so this new album that's coming out, these live tracks are awesome. I'm really happy with what's happened now. But yeah, just lots of different things. Also, without getting too personal, you get up, you go to work, and then you're getting chewed out by your boss because you're off touring all the time and taking time off. You're going home to your girlfriend, it's shitty because you're not there as well. Yeah. It's funny how fucking women or people are attracted to people that do stuff, but when you've got to go and actually do that stuff, they start getting shitty and resentful at you. And then you're coming to band rehearsal and people aren't happy because you're not there enough either. And it's like, okay, well, I'm doing my best. And I think there's just lots of things. And for me, it just kind of snowballed. In the end, I didn't feel very appreciated when these demos got submitted to Roadrunner. I really felt like not the guys, but the head honcho there was really personally attacking me and really picking on my vocals and stuff. I was like, dude, I did all that shit in like 2.5, 3 hours. Yeah. Like, it was that, all that recording, and then there's a couple of extra songs that didn't make it on there, and it was all done very quickly. And in my opinion, it was just meant to be like a draft, like demos. I didn't realize this was going to be the make or break for the album. So, but from that came some good things where they gave me some money to go and get some singing lessons and stuff. But the thing was too, those ideas weren't properly executed. I was still working stuff out. And Frankenbok was a band that used to draft recordings many times, and we'd go in very polished. There's no way I'm going to go into a proper recording studio where time is money and not know what the fuck I'm doing. But yeah, it was just lots of things. So in the end, I think it was just, I felt like my friendships with the guys had gone backwards. I felt like I was not the right singer anymore. And then one day, I think it was just a moment that happened. I was just like, what, fuck this. And I just kind of exploded and went, fuck this, I'm out. And the only regret I have about that is that I wish I was a bit more of a gentleman about it. Sorry, one sec. Yeah, I wish I was more of a gentleman about it, because for the friends I had for those years, they definitely deserved better. But it's just one of those things. I was young, I was stupid, I was impulsive, I was angry, and shit just kind of blew up. But, it all happened for the best. I went off and did my other band. They got Adam Metal, and, 25 years later, the band's still going. So, I think everything happens for a reason. Things come full circle again, and it's great to be friends with these guys again. It's great to be, playing these songs again. And there's even talk about perhaps maybe doing something in the future where like some kind of side project thing or some guest vocals or something. But, we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Oh, sure. So from there, mate, like, you formed Five Star Prison Cell and released 3 albums, plus also played with the Dillinger Escape Plan, Danzig, Arch Enemy, and more. So was that band similar musically to what you actually started with Frankenbok, or did you go in a completely fresh sonic direction?
Look, I mean, the vocals were kind of similar. I got into more layering, and it's a lot more experimental. It was a more crazier version of maybe Frankenbok. But again, it was sort of a balance between what I was doing in Frankenbok and what I did with my old band Bacterium. The guys in Five Star were a bit more into different sort of metal. They liked all like Dillinger and Sugar and stuff that's a bit more left of center and stuff. Whereas I think, don't get me wrong, the guys in Frankenbok like all that stuff too, but they were more into odd time signatures and stuff. Whereas Frankenbok wrote really rockin' sort of catchy riffs and stuff. Whereas Five Star didn't care. They wrote really crazy songs, and it was, you know, just another different beast. You don't want to do the same thing again. So, but you know, it was great. But you know, when Five Star had the first gig, a lot of people that loved Frankenbok turned up, and then they were surprised. So again, it's just starting again from scratch and getting a whole new following. Some people that liked what I did in Frankenbok, you know, continued to follow and enjoy it. But you know, one of the best things I ever heard was this guy came up to me at a gig, and he's like, "Oh, it sucks what happened with you on Frankenbok, because the way I see it now, there's 2 awesome bands that I love." That was awesome. That really warmed my heart, you know. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And you've continued your experimental style on recent solo material, using things like voice samples to create more soundscape style music, mate. So how challenging is that form of music to make?
Well, it's probably the stuff I do now. It's more like these, to me, just more like sketches in a notepad that I probably shouldn't show anybody, but I don't really care. I don't know, like musically, I'm not as accomplished as the guys in Frankenbok or Five Star, but sometimes I just feel like doing stuff, and it's just now with technology and everything, you can just record stuff, you can master it, you can whack it up through DistroKid and bang, it's all on the streaming platforms. I don't know, I think with the solo stuff, there's just things I wanted to do that I never got to do with the bands I was in, so I always wanted to do like a voice focused project that was like inspired by, say, Mike Patton's solo album and Björk as well, because they both just did albums where they were just using their voices, and it was just a lot of fun to do. It was very rewarding to do that by myself and put it out, even to do all the art and everything. So there's just different sides to my musical cube I like to, I guess, experiment and try with, and yeah, like the thing is though, I think when you're in a band and you start something new, like I think people, you would hope that the people that liked what you once did will follow you, but if they don't like it, they're not going to. So you kind of have to start over again. But you know, it's fun. I still get a small handful of people that dig what I do and stuff, and that's awesome. But I do it more for myself now. You know, I've never into it to be popular or to make money or to be massively successful. I mean, obviously that stuff helps. For me, I just enjoy the creative process. Like for me, with writing and recording and that moment when you've actually got that product. So the other week when Dan actually gave me the CD that has come out, that's a reward for me. Like that's just really cool. It's like what I would imagine holding your firstborn child or something feels like. So yeah.
Cool. And when you were first approached to be part of this 25th anniversary show, mate, like was it an instant yes, or did you have to sort of take stock of things and think it through first?
Well, it goes back a little bit further than that. So just before COVID, I ended up at Cherry Rail with a mate, and Frankenbok were playing. I was like, oh, this might be awkward. And then Aaron just walked up to me, shook my hand, and goes, mate, I love your artwork. It's really awesome. And then he just walked off. And I was like, okay, so that was his way of breaking the ice. And then COVID kicked in and we're all in lockdown. And then I got a friend request from Aaron. And so it's like, it's been, 18, 19, 20 years, whatever it was back then. And it's like, it's so heavy. It just weighs down on you to be on bad terms with people, to have enemies, to hate people or whatever. And so him and I started talking, and it was like no time had passed. We patched things up, and then he showed me the new Frankenbok album. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I joked with him and said, if he'd written this album before, I wouldn't have left and stuff like that. So I love the new Overdose album. I love the current lineup. The drummer they've got now is great. The bass player is awesome, Tommy and Owen, sorry. And Dan, I've just got such respect and love for that guy. I've known Dan for years prior to Frankenbok. Our old bands used to play gigs together up in Bairnsdale. And, he's just a great guy. He's been so awesome throughout this whole process of putting this release out. And, it's just been a really, really positive and fun experience. So when the gig is done and stuff, it's, it's a nice little thing that's happened to me this year, and it's been great to reconnect and stuff. And Frankenbok will resume to what it was. But to answer your question, to come back, it's like, a couple of years ago, I probably would have said no, but, everyone's coming back, and not going to be a party pooper or carry on like a spoiled brat or anything. It's an honour to be asked, and it's been fun to do it. And for me, it's all about the nostalgia. And 20 years is a long time to kind of get over your shit and forgive and forget and heal and all that kind of stuff. So I feel, it's great. I feel like a great weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I feel like I've got my old friends back, and that's the best part of it for me. The band, fuck it, I don't really care about that stuff. It's about the friendships you lose. So yeah, to have them back, it's been really awesome and beautiful.
And from all reports, mate, like it's like you'd never left. Like, did the chemistry come straight back, or did you sort of have to work on it?
Look, I was a bit nervous about going in and stuff, because there was bad blood and things were said on both ends, and you kind of feel a bit guilty, kind of walking back in, going, well, I used to slag these guys off and stuff, and didn't like them for a long time. So there's. You can only hope that it's all water under the bridge and everything's forgiven and forgotten. I've made my apologies, and that's all you can kind of do. But, Aaron and I always had a great chemistry and stuff, got along really well. So, yeah, that's been great for that, like just coming back. It is like no time has passed for me personally. And, yeah, and it's just, Dan said to me, he never had any problems with me. It's just the way things went. We just drifted apart and stuff, and he was doing Frankenbok. The way he said it to me was like, look, I loved your band back in the day. And he's like, I'm singing for my favourite band now. So I was like, yeah, that's really cool.
Very cool.
That's a lovely thing to hear,
Yeah, shit. And, of course, this is all happening at the Tote on Saturday, December 10th, the whole 25th anniversary party, mate. So I know there's a lot of people out there excited about seeing the original gang back together, but do you think it's going to be emotional for you being on stage with your old mates and looking into hopefully some familiar faces in the crowd? Like, have you thought about how that moment's going to hit you?
I've been so nervous about just doing my bit and doing it right and getting back into shape, because I haven't really, done vocals like this for such a long time. Recording at home where it's a bit more relaxed and you're not going as hard, like live is more physical. So I've just been more focused on just turning up and doing my job right. I got lucky in the sense of they asked me to do the artwork and stuff. So I've been pretty involved in this new release, which has been really, really cool. But I don't know, maybe emotion will hit me when it happens. I hope not, because I don't want to, I'm not the type to kind of cry over that sort of shit. But I'm looking forward just to having that first rehearsal with the full lineup. Scotty will be back from Perth, and, some of those guys I haven't seen for such a long time. So to see Nick and Tim again and to be playing with him and Aaron, which we've been doing the last couple of weeks, it's been great. And Tommy and Owen have been stepping in and playing some of the songs as well. So it's just fun. Like it's like this whole big Frankenbok kind of, entourage at the moment. There's all these different members turning up, and to sit down and watch some of the others play, watching Dan do a song that I used to sing and stuff, and see his interpretation on it is just a real spin out. And, the other night we did one song where we sort of did it as a duet just for fun. I don't know if it's going to be flipped into the set, but it was really cool. And it was just amazing how in sync we kind of were. Like I didn't even say anything like who's going to sing what. And so I let him take the leading bits and just did some accent vocals over what he was doing. And then he stepped back and let me do stuff. And it was really fun. It was just a lot of fun, it feels like a karate class, just somewhere to go once a week and do something and let out some aggression, it's actually spilled over into my personal life too. Like I'm so passive at work at the moment now, like nothing's getting under my skin, because once a week I've been going out and just fucking yelling my guts out and getting a lot of anger out. It's really cool. It's very therapeutic, man. I recommend to anyone, if you can get into a heavy metal band, you'll be a lot more passive for it.
Very good. All right, Hutchy, well, thanks for your time today, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, mate. I look forward to meeting you and having a beer. And I know people say this sort of bullshit all the time, but tickets are running very fucking low for this. So December the 10th at the Tote, a one-off spectacular 25th anniversary show. So if you don't want to miss out, get in there and get your ticket now.
Lovely to speak with you, mate. You have a great weekend, and we'll catch up soon.
I'll be down there for the show, brother, so we'll have a beer. Awesome. I'll wipe the tears from your eyes if you do happen to cry, brother.
Fuck yeah, man. I look forward to meeting you.
All right, mate. I'll catch up with you then. Thanks for your time, bro.
Thank you, buddy. Bye.
See ya.